Welcome into the DuckTerritory Roundtable. I'm Matt Prehm, Kevin Wade, Erik Skopil with me on the show today, and third edition of the DuckTerritory Roundtable. So really appreciate you guys for tuning in on this. And before we dive into the show, I just want to remind you out there, if you're not a subscriber to DuckTerritory.com, we've got a great deal for you right now. 60% off an annual VIP membership. That gives you inside access, inside scoop, expert analysis, and opinion. Read all the content, not just at DuckTerritory.com, but across the entire 24/7 Sports Network. And you get it for 60% off. That's a one-time billing of $42.96. And if you're not interested in an annual membership, jump in now. Get it for $1 for your first month and $9.95 thereafter. So jump in on that. Now, we're going to jump right into this roundtable. We've got three topics we're going to discuss. Justin Herbert, the latest there with him in the NFL draft, which will take place next week. We've got some additions to the Oregon men's basketball program, and then we'll wrap up the show with some WNBA talk. Erik had a conference call with Sabrina Ionescu. The WNBA draft starts Friday. Let's circle back to Justin Herbert. Now, Kevin, latest rumors surrounding him right now, seems like there's more and more people being linked to Justin Herbert as we're a week away or so from the draft.
You got to play the game with Justin Herbert. Is it a smokescreen, or is it actually what a team's thinking of doing? The latest kind of been for trending the last 2 weeks has been that the Miami Dolphins are looking at Justin Herbert as the number 2 quarterback in the draft. Joe Burrow is kind of, since he won the Heisman, since he won the championship with LSU, has been that number 1 quarterback. But over the past, I would say 3 weeks, there was a report in February, but over the past 3 weeks, Justin Herbert has kind of been talked about as the guy the Miami Dolphins get. Now, could that just be a smokescreen because they know the Chargers want him? Is that just going to try and make the Chargers have to move up in the draft order, potentially with Washington, New York, or Detroit, to have to move up and get Justin Herbert, kind of letting the Dolphins not have to spend to get Tua? Could be a smokescreen. There was also a report out there from NFL Network today that the Detroit Lions are talking with Herbert, and that they're interested in him. So they have the number 3 pick. A lot can happen. It's going to be really interesting to see overall throughout this next week what is actually fact and what is fiction. It's going to be odd because the draft is virtual this year, so you're not going to see a lot of that play out real time. They might have cameras. I know that the NFL has said that they're going to be doing the draft draft-a-thon is what they're calling it. They're going to have cameras in all the draft rooms and all the GM's houses and whatnot to try and give you an inside look, as well as the players, and Justin Herbert will be part of that draft virtual process. So it's going to be interesting to see play out, but I think right now there's a lot of smoke that Miami is becoming one of the top teams for Justin Herbert.
Maybe the best way to parse through this is to kind of see how Vegas gauges this. I know, Kevin, they've released it in the last couple of days, some odds about his most likely landing spot. Where do they believe he's most likely to go?
Yeah, you can't bet on sports right now, but you can definitely bet on the draft. So right now, according to William Hill, the latest lines, Herbert, the over-under is 6, which is pretty interesting because more teams are being talked about as Herbert going earlier. But that 6th pick belongs to Los Angeles Chargers. So it'd be a push if he ends up going to Los Angeles, who coincidentally have the best odds right now, William Hill, of landing him. 7-5 odds. Pretty much the favorite they have been since they announced that Phillip Rivers would not be re-signing in Los Angeles. He obviously moved on. They do have Tyrod Taylor, so that'll be interesting to see how that mix works out. But then right after them, increasing their odds in the past few weeks as this Miami talk is the Dolphins, and they're at 9-5 odds. Right behind them, Carolina Panthers. They did sign Teddy Bridgewater, but they are releasing Cam Newton, so they might be looking for a franchise quarterback. And as we saw with how big a salary Matt Rule went, that their new owner isn't afraid to spend. Las Vegas Raiders come in 4th, 12-1 odds. Could we see Derek Carr get shipped somewhere else and Marcus Mariota is the bridge for Justin Herbert? That would be pretty wild. We'll see that. And then a few other teams, Jacksonville Jaguars and New England Patriots at 15-1. I know there's some reports that New England really likes Herbert, but they'd have to give up a lot to get him. So I think those are kind of the odds right now. The fields, if you want to bet on any of the other teams, 30-1, and then 51 Cincinnati Bengals. So I know there's been some talk that Cincinnati Bengals could trade with the Miami Dolphins, and if they want to go get Tua or they want to go get Burrow or someone like that, and Herbert might fall to the Bengals in Miami's spot at number 5, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen. Moving on, the Oregon men's basketball team got some pretty big news this week. Matt, you were all over that on Easter. What is the graduate transfer going to bring to the Ducks?
Yeah, they added Amauri Hardy from UNLV, 6'2" combo guard, averaged 14 points and 3 rebounds and 3 assists a game as a junior this past season, and basically the exact same stat line as a sophomore a year before that. And so Hardy's biggest impact next year, I think, is going to be some stability off the bench and some veteran leadership. He may start out at the beginning of the year. He may be a guy that pushes his way into the starting lineup second half of that season as Oregon figures things out. But the biggest impact is Oregon now has another player that can create his own shot and create for others, which was what Peyton Pritchard was at his best doing last season. They're going to lean on Will Richardson to replace Pritchard, but now they've got kind of a safety valve for Richardson if he can't, and Hardy. And then let's say if someone goes pro on this team that's unexpected, maybe that's a Will Richardson, maybe that's a Chris Duarte at the guard spot, or someone transfers out of the program, you're now protecting yourself with a veteran player in Hardy who has been a 2-year starter. He's a 1,000-point career scorer. He's a guy that averages 3 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists per game in the last 2 years. There were only 2 players in the Pac-12 this past season that averaged 14 points, 3 rebounds, and 3 assists and shot 40% or better from the field. And that was Peyton Pritchard and Ethan Thompson of Oregon State. Both those guys put up better numbers than Hardy did, but at a tougher level. But there were only 2 players that equaled or matched Hardy's numbers. So Oregon's getting an instant impact player at that guard position that can play multiple spots.
I wonder how this impacts your view, Matt, as Oregon as a potential Pac-12 champion next year. Obviously, they won this past season. Losing Pritchard, I think there was a lot of concern about how that would all come together. But Oregon right now seems like they're in a pretty good spot. I know they're filled up with their scholarship numbers. Kind of how do you see them as a possible Pac-12 champion next year?
Yeah, they're done right now. The only way they can add a player is if he walks on or if someone leaves the program, and right now no one has. So I think you look at this roster, and yes, they lose Pritchard, who was an All-American. Shakur Juice and Anthony Mathis were both, solid seniors this past year for the program and are now gone. But I look at Oregon and think they're the Pac-12 favorite going into next season. I understand that Arizona State, they just added a 5-star recruit, and they've got a couple guys coming back, or a majority of their starting lineup coming back. I know UCLA has one of the best point guards in the country in Deshaun Nix coming in, and they bring back their 5 best scorers, and Stanford's got a loaded roster coming back as well. But the reality is the last 5 years, Oregon has won 3 Pac-12 championships when you look at regular season or conference tournament. And they are extremely loaded with experience just as well. I mean, yeah, they don't have their best player back, but their starting lineup, their projected starting lineup, from my perspective at least, is a sophomore in N'Faly Dante, a senior in Eugene Umari, who averaged 13 points and 7 rebounds at Rutgers in the Big Ten, was one of the best power forwards in that league a year ago. They're also adding Eric Williams from Duquesne, a junior. He's both Umari and Rutgers, both Umari and Williams were on the roster last season. They practiced through the entire year. They just were not allowed to play. And then Chris Duarte has an all Pac-12 player of the year caliber potential to his game. Same thing with Will Richardson. So, Oregon is in a unique spot where they're not having to lean on their best player or their second or third best player to carry them, and that guy be a newcomer. And UCLA, Daishawn Nix, he's going to be their starting point guard. That's a freshman. That's a newcomer. Never gone through the rigors of college basketball before. ASU with Christopher, five-star Christopher coming in, another guard. He's going to be asked to be, their second or third best player, most likely their second best player behind Remy Martin. It's his first year in college basketball. You look at Colorado, same thing. They're having to replace some freshmen. You look at Stanford as well. Zaire Williamson, a five-star. Stanford maybe might be the team that worries me the most of challenging Oregon, because their 2 or 3 or 4 best players are all returners, just like Oregon. So long story short, I think this team is poised to set themselves up for their Pac-12 championship in the regular season.
So Oregon basketball, the men's team, obviously got some big additions for next year. On the women's side, this week is all about the WNBA Draft. That's coming up this week. Erik, you've been covering all that. Does it look like the Ducks are going to have the first 2 players off the board?
Yeah, it does. And I don't know if I felt that way even a couple of weeks ago, but there's been a lot of WNBA mock drafts that have come out over the last couple of weeks. I think I did a recap of those on the site yesterday with 7 of them, and 6 of those 7 mock drafts, these are predictions of what's going to happen on Friday, have Sabrina Ionescu going first. That's actually a consensus, but the big story is Satou Sabally moving up to be the 2nd overall pick by the Dallas Wings. There's a lot of traction that's going to happen. I've heard outside of what I've read online, I've talked to some people, and that certainly seems like what the expectation is for Friday. So it looks like the Ducks are going to go 1-2 in the first round, and then Ruthie Hebert will go somewhere after that, and it could be anywhere from maybe 5 to 11 is about the range I saw on those mock drafts. But this is a huge deal, and I mean, I was earlier in the day running through Oregon's history in the WNBA draft, and Oregon has not had a single player prior to this year taken in the first round, like at all. They have had 8 total players drafted since 1997, which was the first WNBA draft in their expansion year. But none of those players have been taken before the 20th overall selection, which was Maite Cazorla last year. So historically, Oregon has not had a lot of players taken in the WNBA draft, not a lot of first-round players. That's about to change on Friday, when you're going to see 3 players taken in the first round and a 4th. And Mignon Moore maybe goes off the board in either the 2nd or the 3rd round. I don't think it's a guarantee that happens, but that's certainly another storyline to keep an eye on Friday.
Seems like, Erik, that Sabrina has been kind of just locked in as the number 1 overall pick, basically ever since she came back to school last year for her senior season. And quite honestly, she felt like the lock to be the first as a junior.
Yeah.
But this season, we know it's the New York Liberty unless someone else decides to trade up. You mentioned, Dallas on the podcast could maybe, package 3 or 4 of their first-round draft picks to see if they could get the first. But who knows if that'll happen. So right now, what's the fit right now, you feel like, with the Liberty and Sabrina?
I think it could be a really good fit. And I was just kind of thinking about this before coming on here. Imagine a scenario where she gets to New York City and takes it by storm, and they win championships pretty quickly. And she not only elevates her personal brand, which obviously is at an all-time high right now in terms of interest. We were on a teleconference call with her earlier on Tuesday, and there were about 50 media members from around the country on that call, all kind of wanting to see what she had to say before this week's draft. So it's already really high, but I think she goes out and if she has success in New York, I mean, what other better place to really, I guess, build a brand and a career than in New York City, where basketball is a huge part of what they do out there. So I think that's really exciting. And then in terms of just the roster, the Liberty were bad last year. That's why they got the number 1 pick. They won 10 games out of 34. They finished 5th out of 6 teams in the Eastern Conference. They weren't very good. But the good news is for Sabrina is it's a pretty young team. They have Tina Charles, who's probably a name even some of the not big WNBA fans are at least familiar with. She's a perennial kind of all-star caliber player, but they've got a couple of young guards along with Sabrina they've been building around. Kia Nurse was a WNBA all-star last year in her 2nd year. She was the 10th overall pick in 2018. And then last year they took Louisville's Asia Durr with the number 2 overall pick. She's another combo guard. So they could have a really fun in a kind of young backcourt there. They got 3 guards that are all 25 and under, all top 10 draft picks, all pretty highly regarded players. So I think the potential could be there for that to come together pretty quickly. It's just a matter of seeing kind of what that development is. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see if it is New York. It kind of feels like that's certainly where this is headed. But Matt's right. The Dallas Wings are sitting there with, I think, 4 first-round picks and could, theoretically put together a package to get Sabrina at number 1. I don't know if the Liberty are really going to let that happen, though. I'd probably be a little surprised, but crazier things have happened.
Yeah, we'll have full coverage of the WNBA draft remotely best we can. Erik will be tracking that, and we've had stories up on the site previewing all of that. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed that. We're also tracking, like Kevin has covered, Justin Herbert and where he's going, as well as all the other seniors that were on this past season's Oregon football team. Lots of movement there, lots of discussion there. And for Oregon basketball now, it's figuring out how all these pieces will fit, and we'll continue to have coverage on that as well on DuckTerritory.com. So thank you for watching this Duck Territory Roundtable, or if you're listening to it on the podcast, we appreciate you doing it there as well. Tune in next week when we've got another one, and if you're not a subscriber, again, I just want to remind you guys, you can subscribe today, get 60% off an annual VIP membership, or you could get $1 off your first $1 for your first month. At DuckTerritory.com, and then it goes to $9.95. So for Kevin Wade, Erik Skopil, myself, Matt Prehm, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you soon.